What the fuck were they thinking? What were they thinking when they created this abomination of a character?
I will do my best.
Welcome to the Worst Characters in Videogames, a small series of videos in which I explain exactly what's wrong with certain characters in the area of interactive entertainment. And one of the worst characters in the medium of video games is Honoka from the Dead or Alive series. Now, this character is a fairly new addition to the series, with her debut taking place in the last game, the last mainline entry of the series, Dead or Alive 5, Last Round, which was the last version of Dead or Alive 5 that was released back in 2015, a few years ago. Honoka was a DLC character that was teased for that game, in which the developer of the Dead or Alive series, Team Ninja, had promised fans a new addition to the character roster, and that new addition was going to be a female character. And Honoka was just one of a few different female characters that were added to Dead or Alive 5. The others include Neo Tengu and Marie Rose, both of whom also made a return in Dead or Alive 6. Honoka, however, has become a point of contention within the Dead or Alive community, as well as the fighting game community and the video game community as a whole, because this character was not designed to be a fun and brand new addition to the Dead or Alive roster, which is one of the problems with the character. Honoka was designed to appeal to a specific fetish for those who just do not have their shit together when it comes to relationships. Now, Honoka has made more than just the appearances in the mainline Dead or Alive series. The character was also brought back, along with Marie Rose, for Dead or Alive Extreme 3, which is another one of those games which is chopped up into these pointless mini-games, and the entire point of the game is for the player to fondle over the women that are in the game, these virtual characters that don't exist. And Honoka, of course, was the character that was presented the most on the cover art, with the only other character being Marie Rose. Team Ninja knew exactly what they were doing when they created this character. There's a few different issues with Honoka as a character, and some of these issues were expanded with the release of Dead or Alive 6, which I'll get into. But first of all, I'm going to talk about the design of the character. So Honoka is a teenage girl. She's not a grown woman, she's a teenage girl whose fascination is learning the moves of other fighters that she meets. She's also a student. So this is a character that wears typical Japanese schoolgirl attire, which plays into the whole fetish aspect of her character, which further backs up my point of what the problem is with the design of the character and what the intent was when Team Ninja created Honoka. So aside from having a very boring design for this character, Honoka also represents a turning point with the new characters in the Dead or Alive series, where they start to look more like anime characters than they do actual real people. If you take a look at a lot of the other female characters in the Dead or Alive series, a lot of them do have a typical Japanese design, but they also look like actual people. Honoka, however, has a very uncomfortable baby face aesthetic to her design, in which she appears to be much younger than what the developers have labeled her as. Once again, this plays into the whole creepy fetish for the people out there that don't have girlfriends. So the schoolgirl attire and the baby face aesthetic, combined with the anime-ish pink hair that is completely unrealistic and ridiculous, all makes Honoka a character that only appeals to a very specific demographic, which is that of 12-year-old boys and man-children. So that's the first part of what the problem is with Honoka, is her design. The second part of what's wrong with Honoka is the gameplay. Honoka's moveset is an amalgamation of several different characters from the Dead or Alive roster. This includes Tina, John Lee, Hitomi, Brad Wong, Helena, Kasumi, Lisa, and more. Honoka doesn't actually have her own moveset. Everything that she does was ripped from the other characters in the game. Team Ninja couldn't actually be bothered to give Honoka her own moveset. So the design of her from a gameplay perspective is lazy. And considering that she originally was a DLC character that you had to pay for in order to gain access to, that makes it even more insulting for the fans of the Dead or Alive series. So that's problem number 2 with Honoka. Problem number 1 is her design. Problem number 2 is her gameplay. Problem number 3 with this character is her story. Now, Honoka was a DLC character, as I already explained, from Dead or Alive 5. That's when she made her entrance into the series. Therefore, she was not a part of that game's story. But with the recent Dead or Alive 6, Honoka was given a more prominent role in the storyline of that game. If you made it far enough into that game's terrible story mode, there's a big revelation towards the end of the game. And it is revealed that Honoka is actually the daughter of another character in the series, Raido, who is one of the main antagonists in the Dead or Alive series. The problem with that is the fact that this makes Honoka the biological sister of another character in the series, Ayane, who has a tragic backstory, if you know anything about that character. Ayane is one of the best characters in the Dead or Alive series. And the fact that she is the biological sister of Honoka trivializes her character. And this is due to the fact that Honoka, personality-wise, is completely different from Ayane. They are not even remotely similar. Not to mention, Kasumi, the main character of the series, is already the half-sister of Ayane. So why the game developers chose to give Ayane another sister in the series is beyond me. It doesn't make any sense. And once again, it's insulting for anyone who is invested in the storyline, what little story there is, of these games. The last major issue with Honoka is the voice of the character. And I consider this to be her worst aspect. That is, if you disregard the fact that she has the largest bust in the game out of all the other characters in the series, including Tina, which I'm not even going to get into because it's too ridiculous for me to even comment on. So I'm specifically going to talk about the English voice for Honoka, which is this very pubescent and juvenile little girl voice that comes off as very annoying and has a what the fuck kind of factor to it.
What? Does it really hurt that much?
The performance of this character is so terrible that I was curious as to who the voice actress actually was, who delivers the performance for the character. American voice actress Kira Buckland is the person who does the voice for Honoka for the English localization of the Dead or Alive series. Now, Kira Buckland is a 31-year-old woman. I understand that it's a voice actor's job to portray different characters of all different ages. However, it baffles me why the development team, whoever was in charge of the sound design for this game, both Dead or Alive 6, Dead or Alive Extreme 3, and Dead or Alive 5. It baffles me why the person who is in charge of directing the voice actors would ask Kira Buckland to portray a character in this manner. Every single line that comes out of Honoka's mouth makes me want to strangle somebody. The character comes off as immensely unintelligent, to the point that it's just a joke. And Dead or Alive 6 in particular points out the fact that the character is stupid. For example, when you complete 2 episodes involving Honoka in the story mode for Dead or Alive 6, you unlock a title called Airhead. The term Airhead refers to someone who is stupid. And there is nothing in the story mode of Dead or Alive 6 that Honoka does that can be perceived as smart or cunning. She's just dumb. A dumb teenage girl who can somehow perfectly mimic a trained fighter's repertoire of moves visually. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. Honoka really represents a time in gaming where female characters weren't taken seriously. It was all about tits and ass. And while the Dead or Alive series remains stagnant in a point in time in which video games really were meant for younger audiences, gaming has started to mature to the point where people of all different ages and walks of life can be included in enjoying them. And there's a lot of great female characters today in gaming, from Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite, to Ellie from The Last of Us, to Jodie from Beyond Two Souls, to Claire from Resident Evil, to Zoe from the same series, to Makoto from Persona 5, so on and so forth, the list goes on. As I already stated, there's a lot of great female characters in the modern era of video games. Honoka, unfortunately, is not one of them. Hands down, this is one of the worst characters I have seen in the medium of video games in quite some time. There's only a few characters who are just as bad as Honoka is. And of course, I'm going to make videos for those characters as well. Speaking of which, if you really want to see how annoying Honoka can be, I don't recommend, but I suggest that you choose Honoka as a playable character, and then choose Honoka again as your opponent, and try and play one match without ripping your hair out. Trust me, it is not a comfortable experience.
Alright. I will do my best. Alright. I will do my best.
So, that's the video. I believe I stated this in my retrospective for Nier Automata. Japanese game developers, with the exception of probably Capcom, really have not gotten the memo when it comes to writing female characters in video games. And any character that appears to have some kind of strange anime aesthetic, especially if they have pink hair, is doomed for failure. Speaking of which, that reminds me of something.